Hey everybody, welcome to the SaaS Founder Show. It's Tony Zayas. I'm joined by Insidious founder, and
Hey, I'm doing great, Tony. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just another day and
It's a fantastic
waking up.
day. My yard is strewn with leaves and ballots, and hopefully later I'll be able to get out and just blow those into a pile and down the hill.
Yeah. So not a whole lot going on in the news. So I think we'll have a lot of people paying attention here to the show because everyone's pretty focused. But yeah, so another SaaS Founder Show here today. We're excited to dive in. We got a great founder on today. So Jimmy Shabat from Zizo. And I'm going to just bring Jimmy on and we'll ask him some questions here all about his story. So with that, let me go ahead and bring Jimmy on. So Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Real good, thank you. So welcome. We appreciate you taking your time out to spend some time with us, and want to hear all about Zizo. But I would love to hear just a bit about your personal story. It looks like you've kind of that serial entrepreneur, done a number of things in different industries. So what got you to this point?
Well, like you said, it's a long story. Serial entrepreneur, one of those kids that had the lemonade stand. Always looking for ways to, capitalize on any opportunity, especially when I was younger. As I got older, that continued. I think it's one of those innate things in my DNA. My father, he was an entrepreneur. My siblings, they're all entrepreneurs. So everybody's got their kind of own story. And my first business that I started to get into that kind of got me down this path into this journey was in IT consulting. And I had a passion for computers. I had a passion for just information technology. And then, when I was younger, the internet really became prevalent, and I was around with the dial-up modems, and that slow speeds. And I had developed an application and partnered with somebody to create a 3D virtual world multi-user, and ahead of its time because the bandwidth just couldn't handle the speeds. And it was one of those experiences that people consider it failure. I consider it education.
Yep.
And it's part of my learning experiences. So from there, I had developed my own IT consulting company, worked with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses in developing their IT infrastructure, as well as helping them with their web development and web applications. And I just love creating solutions. One of my clients became actually a partner. I helped a client of mine who was also a friend build a collection agency and set up their network and set up their infrastructure. My passion for business, I just started advising them on some of their business dealings, from an accounting, HR standpoint. And, they asked me to come on board as a partner, and I did. And that's kind of where I started to pivot down the road where I am today. And it was in that experience where it was a bit of a culture shock. My first role within the company was primarily back end, back office operations, vendor relationships, payroll, accounting, things of that nature, as well as IT. And then, we started to grow substantially, and I got involved with operations and dealing with the workforce. And it was a very different workforce. And, this was 12 years ago, and it was just a workforce of that they weren't accountable. They didn't like to be held accountable. They'd come and go as they wanted. And, for me, I'm a business professional, and I was used to dealing with those sort of people. And I was just getting what I call talked off all the time. So every time I would bring somebody in to have a conversation about why they're not performing, at least to the level that we expect, they would just point the finger and blame somebody else, and I would believe them. So I created the first iteration of Zizo during this time, where there's a traditional dry erase board on everybody's office floor. I don't know if you're familiar with call centers, but it's a tradition in the call center space where somebody closes a deal, they walk up to that board, they write down the features of the deal, and that walk up there is kind of that recognition, that celebration of, hey, I achieved and I accomplished, and look at me. And, we would copy the contents of this board every morning and file it away. And one morning I was looking at this pile and I said, if there's a way for me to harvest this information, there's a lot of information here that I can use to help rebut some of the excuses. And that was the first iteration of Zizo. And it was more of a data analytics, be able to uncover some truths, empirical truths through data, as opposed to talking to people and getting their story. And so it was from there that this evolved into Zizo. And, over the course of the past 10 years, we evolved it to begin to add some gamification features. So one of the other traditions in call center spaces and collections is contests, always incentivizing. You throw a TV on the floor and you say, hey, whoever gets the biggest number this month is going to get this TV. Or you do blitzes where you say, the next hour, the first person that puts that closes the next deal, here's a $5 bill, you come up and grab it. And all of these things are part of the tradition of call centers or collections. And, it started to waver, as you kind of do this for years and years. You get the same people winning the contest, so everybody else gets demotivated. Or you change it up and you build contests where everybody gets a raffle ticket and it's a Chinese auction at the end. And, somebody who's low man on a totem pole, very low performer, wins the big prize and everybody else is upset. So we wanted to build something that's fair and across the board distributes the wealth, equally, but you have to earn it. And it's not just one big prize, it's a bunch of different prizes. And, this iteration of Zizo, what we developed, we actually leveraged the feature sets and the psychological profiles of video games and how they built it. Things like Fortnite, the EA Sports franchises, Madden, FIFA, their hockey franchise, Call of Duty with the badges and the rankings and the levels and, leveling up and, with the avatars. Or Fortnite is another one where, I thought that was a genius model. They gave this game away for free, but then they sold you in-app things like dance moves and skins. And I've got a 13-year-old son, and I got to tell you, I spent more money on that than any other game. Maybe Madden, he really takes to that. But we really incorporated a lot of those feature sets into Zizo. And, we're right now, we're launching beta this week, and we're getting ready to launch into the full marketplace over the course of the next couple of months. So we're really excited. That's a long-winded pathway to where we are today.
Yeah, that's fantastic, though. I love gamification. I'm such a fan of it. I mean, in every industry, there's just an opportunity to, look at how do you incentivize people. And so I love that you're bringing that concept in. I'm kind of curious. So you're obviously in another organization and running day to day. So one of the challenges that I see with a lot of founders that we talk about when they're trying to create a software product is, how do you balance your day to day to create it? Is that something, that you took on yourself, that you hired folks? How did you make that transaction actually true, that to build a product?
So we really started committed to the concept of building this out and bringing it to the marketplace in 2018. So we invested in research, made sure that, from a UX standpoint, a user experience standpoint, that we were building it towards the people that are going to use it, what they're looking for. We did a lot of studies within gamification, within user interface and user experience. And during that time, I had an agency. I also have a debt buying company. I also have a restaurant. My restaurant, I'm more of the back end person as well. I've got my brother and his wife kind of running the operation. But in the beginning of this year, 2020, pre-COVID, I decided, I'm committing to this thing. And just like you said, hey, how do you spread your time out? Without diluting the value or the quality of that time. And so I understood that, and I understood that either you have to have a really good team, which I do, or you have to just commit to one thing. And so I decided that I'm going to sell my agency, which was the biggest, I guess, consumer of my time, and I'm going to focus on this. So I sold my agency. Fortunately, the timing was perfect because COVID hit, and so I don't have to deal with all of the ramifications of that. and I've invested, all my capital and all my time into making this thing work. So I agree with you. It is a challenge if you're trying to do multiple things. And so I did make that commitment that I am going to focus on this one.
Yeah, I've found that over the years is that, there's folks that they're in an existing business and they try and create it while they've got a full-time job. And, it just ends up failing a lot of times. And so if you don't, if you're not able to take that focus and really put it on the product, it can be extremely challenging.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
How'd you, what was that feeling of selling the agency and committing fully to this? What was that emotional and kind of mental place that you were in at that stage?
It's nerve wracking. I mean, when you're committing, that was my lifeline. It's paid for everything. And so part of that decision really came from the research, right? We really vetted this opportunity out prior to making it. We looked at the market opportunity. I built a prototype in the beginning, and I started pitching it to different agencies and to see if it's something that they would use. One of the big things that was happening in our industry and across all industry is the new generational workforce. They're a different breed and they require different management style, and people are trying to figure out what that management style is. And I feel that we've figured it out. I think gamification is what's going to engage this workforce. It's what's going to keep them interested in coming to work every day and not just jump from job to job to job. So, in our research and our studies and vetting this operation, it gave me the confidence that I was making the right decision. I had many, many different people say, yes, this thing is going to be a winner. Yes, we're on board. Build this. You've got us as a customer. Within the industry, I have 12 years of experience within the space, and I leverage that experience to go out and get the right information for me to make the decision. So, it wasn't one of those, I'm all in, let's go. It was, let's take the steps. I've done this in the past where I went down a road and it's like, damn, I didn't really fully commit. I spent a lot of money, I put a lot of energy, and, I have nothing to show for it. So this was kind of a byproduct of the past experiences that I've had, that I did it a different way.
How important do you think it is for, people that are looking to go on this journey to really vet out the idea? How deep should they go? Did that look like for you?
To answer the first part of your question, I think it's critical. I don't think you should just go off on a gut feeling. I think most entrepreneurs, they have this self-confidence, which can translate to ego, very easily. And, they're blinded by facts. And, and I've done that in the past. And so you need some sort of affirmation, some reinforcement of what you're thinking from peers. For me personally, it's not an idea that's outside my scope of experience. I'm building something, or I had built something that worked for me, and other people within the space were asking about it, because with attrition, people kind of jump from one agency to another. And from a geographical standpoint, Buffalo is a hub for call centers and collections. So people know each other. And so they start hearing about the product and saying and requesting it. So we knew that there was validation, but I built a prototype. I went out there and I actually demonstrated it. And I asked, would you buy this? And I had a lot of people commit, and they said, yes, absolutely, we would buy it. We need this. And they understood that I experienced the same pain points that they have. And so, if you're thinking of an idea that, is not within your scope of experience, then go to people who have that experience and get it validated, before you jump in and you quit your job and you commit all your savings into this. I think validation is important to making decisions.
Yeah, it's funny, over the years I've had it's amazing how many folks I've had come in, kind of pitch their idea. They've been working on something for months. I do a quick Google search after I ask them about, what competitors are in the marketplace, et cetera. They say, oh, no, this is completely unique. And within, the first page of Google, there's 10 results that are exactly what they're trying to do. And so it's always been interesting to me how blinded some folks can be by the excitement for the idea and the level of uniqueness and how much they're willing to go out. And I've almost found, I feel like sometimes people are afraid to go look because they don't want to find out that their idea isn't unique, which is the opposite of how you start a business, right?
Yeah, and that's their ego protecting them, right? Saying, no, you're the best. Don't go searching for anything else. And, that was one of the first things we did is we went out and we did the research. We did what you can call it corporate espionage. We studied our competitors. What are you offering? What's your price point? What are the features? How are we differentiated? And we made sure that we're not going down a road where, the marketplace is saturated with competitors where you're never going to be able, especially as a startup, to be able to penetrate and get market share. One of the things that we found is, I can win my space. With collections, there was nobody doing gamification. And so that was one advantage, but also we built a platform that was very different than anything that's out there. Gamification is a very broad stroke. If you think of the term, if you've got a reward system, that's gamification. If you got a badge, that's gamification. We've taken it many, many steps further. We've created a gaming experience. We've mimicked all of the games that we know are popular and are trending in video games and bringing it into this environment. So yeah, do your research, check out the competition. Don't let that deter you, but definitely use that as part of your strategy planning and, on how you're going to differentiate yourself and how you're going to launch it in a marketplace.
Yeah, that's great.
To go off of that point, Jimmy, talking about the gamification and kind of what you've learned from video games, tell us more about that, because I'm interested in that. Gamification is a fascinating topic, and I think that is smart that you're looking kind of at the video gaming world, probably looking at some of those psychological triggers, things that pull people back in to be hooked and really go to it. But what have you learned, and kind of how did you navigate that? Is a video game something that you're into? I know you mentioned your son, and love to hear more.
Yeah, no, I grew up on video games. I was on the first version of Nintendo. I think it was my first video console that I had. I went on to Sega, then Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and everything all the way through all of the PlayStations, all of the Xboxes. And so I've been a gamer my whole life. I think I got to one point where I may have been addicted. It was SOCOM, and it was the first real multiplayer game where you're online and you're competing against, or with your friends. And it just consumed my time. And, I knew at that point I was, I think in a relationship that I was about to get out of or about to lose a relationship if I didn't stop playing. So, but I learned from that experience. And, Madden is one of my favorite franchises, playing the football game. But then my son, I would play with him when he was young, and, he continues to evolve, and it's become a community. I mean, nowadays, if you look at maybe the way we played growing up, we were outside, and if we wanted to play video games with our friends, we would go over their house or they'd come over to ours. Now everybody's in their own house. They got the headsets on. They're playing every day, all day. They're no longer outside, which I think is a shame. But from the experience standpoint and how I studied games and how I built that in there is, there's a reward system that you have to constantly have. So micro rewards. So a lot of the gamification that happens in workplaces is usually larger rewards, long contests drawn out, or, if you do smaller rewards, it's the same people that are winning them always. So I wanted to find a way that gives everybody an opportunity to win. And so the first thing I did was create an experience, a rank level system. When I first set up, the first iteration was only 4 levels, and I used Madden's, rookie, pro, all pro, and I used superstar instead of all Madden. But now we've changed it to rookie, pro, all pro, superstar, and we added legend, and then we added 5 more levels, or 5 levels per rank. So we've got 25 rank levels. And this is part of our career road mapping. So it's the engagement and the long-term retention that we're focused on here. How do you keep people there longer? And you find a career roadmap so people can graduate or get promoted through the rank levels by earning smaller challenges. You're competing not against your peers, but against yourself and the expectations of that rank level. But then you're also getting rewarded and recognized for career achievements. So as you're hitting milestones, you're also getting rewarded. And that's something that most corporations, businesses don't look at, track, report, recognize, or reward is, hey, how many deals have you closed all time? you know? And when you hit a certain milestone, do you get that recognition? Do you get that reward? And so we're leveraging kind of the career element of video games and bringing that into the equation as well. And one of the biggest findings, and I want to say surprises of the research and the findings there and building it in, is that a lot of people don't like to compete against one another. And we made sure that we built a collaborative contest so that way people can compete together towards a common goal. It builds a better culture. Some people love to compete and they want to beat you, especially if you're friends, like, hey, you and I today, we're going to see who's going to win. But most of the time they love to, hey, and we used to do this every Friday. We'd say, when you guys hit this number as a team, you guys could all go home for the rest of the day paid. They would hit it 90% of the time. I mean, we realized it without even realizing it. The study and the research that we did brought that to the forefront and to our attention. And we made sure that we incorporated that. But an avatar system, very similar to Fortnite, where people are able to customize their avatar to look like them, to change their wardrobe, their accessories, and their clothing every day, which they acquire using one of the currencies that we reward them with. So there's coins and there's Z-Bucks. So there's a reward store. So now not every size fits all with respect to the rewards. So we create a reward store where it's both, there's tangible goods as well as company perks. People value paid time off more so today than ever before. So adding things like PTO or get out of jail free. So if they show up late, they're not getting reprimanded, or VIP parking, or access to the executive lounge. These are things that, people, they're not traditional incentives, they're not traditional rewards, but it brings a new element. And another part of the psychology of gamification is that variable reward system. You can't have the same rewards all the time. You have to change it up, switch it up, make things exclusive. Fortnite used to have these skins that they used to sell in their store, and they would launch the store every 2 weeks at 8:00. And my son would be there waiting for it to launch. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to do is don't always have the same rewards, make things exclusive, that there's only 2 or 3 of these things in the inventory. First 2 or 3 people to get it, that's exclusive to them. And so those are some of the psychological elements that we're borrowing from the game industry and bringing it into the gamification to create a real gaming experience, not just a leaderboard or a public display board that showcases who's, done what today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's so many different layers you can go into, and that's a great point, that sometimes gamification is just so simple and basic that you're not getting people really into it like you can. So pretty cool. How focused are you? You mentioned, call centers and collections. Is that the target for you guys for now?
For now, yes. I think, we're in the process of doing a capital raise, and I think when you tell people that, the world is our marketplace, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. So you can't, kind of use that as your total addressable market is hundreds of billions of dollars. You got to really focus. And it really, we're using and leveraging our experience and the relationships that we have to target and win this space first. And I think that's important, for anybody who's got an idea, is to focus on a very narrow market that you could win. Now, some investors may say that's too small of a market. And we say, well, this is scalable, across all industries, but we're just not focused on scaling it right now. We want to focus on the things that we know, the KPIs that we're familiar with, the people that we do business with, and we're going to win that space. And then from there, call centers, sales teams, staffing, this thing can go into manufacturing, retail, even restaurants. I've got a friend of mine who's got a restaurant, and I was pitching it to him as an investor, and he says, well, Jimmy, we do these contests where, we see who does the most upselling, or we do, we get customer feedback to see, how good their service was. He says, I'd love to have this because we're franchising and we want to be able to have competition between locations, between peers within a group, team versus team, location versus location. He said, this thing would be perfect for us. And, we tie in that one of the important parts of our product is that integration, that we build APIs that integrate with your system of record. So we're getting real-time data right from your system. So it's not something that you have to do double data entry with. But it does scale across all industries, and you can make it yours. We've built it so as long as you have a measurable metric, we can gamify it.
That's great. Yeah, it's funny. I years ago worked with a manufacturing company that, they had employees that would handle a machine, and then they'd have 2 minutes of downtime before they could do it again. And we had talked a lot about the idea that, they could have a little iPad sitting there and answer safety questions and earn points, and those points could get them things. And so, showing like how it can move from industry. There's so many things that you can apply what your concept is to. But I really appreciate that you've got the concept of being narrowed at first, because that's a big thing we always talk about, is just the last thing you want to do is be so wide that it's hard to go after such a wide audience. So was that something that you knew from past businesses, or how did you come to that determination to stay focused at first and not be so wide? Because I do meet a lot of entrepreneurs and startup folks that right up front, they want to go wide. So what kept you there?
Well, yeah, there was an experience that I had in the past. I was building a software application, and it's kind of two different things, but they're very related. This was a very comprehensive, it was about cloud storage, intelligent cloud storage. It started off as more for the academic. It's a traditional yearbook, digitizing the traditional yearbook. And then we went into talking about creating personal yearbooks where, it catalogs your life and all of your photos. I mean, I know that a lot of people use Instagram, Facebook to post, but that's not all the photos that they take. iCloud has since, this was 7 years ago that I started developing this, but the scale of which I was building this thing was very ambitious, and, it was targeting multiple places, and I never got to MVP, and MVP is minimal viable product. And it cost me a lot of money, and we never got to market. Now, my team, I earned a lot of respect from my team because they called me a visionary. They said, all the things that you look to build is now out in the marketplace by Google, Apple, Dropbox. All of these people, developed all the features that you were looking for. So it was a painful experience. It was from a financial standpoint as well as an ego standpoint, and I had to kind of pull it back. But from that experience, I knew that, number one, from a feature set, get out there with the minimal viable product. And then from a sales standpoint, every industry is going to have kind of their own sales cycle, right? And, some are going to be, whether you're dealing with small businesses all the way up to enterprise, how many presentations are you going to have to give before you get the decision maker? Who is the decision maker? So when you narrow down your focus, I think you have a stronger rate of success, especially if you know people in the space. It gives you just want traction. You want success in the beginning. That'll help you learn, because there's a saying, fail fast, right? It's not that they want you to fail. It's just, if you are going to, you can be agile enough when you're small and nimble that you can make those pivots and those turns fairly easily, without costing a lot of money. So I think you need to really control the ego, and it's, you're going to get there. Just get there slowly. Before you walk before you run.
Yeah, that seems to be one of my biggest things that I see, is you get someone in a room and you try and narrow them down, and all their mind can do is go, oh, it can work for this. It could work for this. It could work for this. And, at some point, like you said, you can't get a product out. You're trying to put too many messages out to the marketplace, and it just all gets diluted. So I'm curious, how did you get to the features that you wanted for your MVP and your beta? How'd you determine what the right set of features were going to be in that initial phase? Because I'm sure you have 1,000 ideas, but how'd you narrow it down?
There's a process where, I forget the exact name of it, but you basically score every feature in terms of velocity and the cost, right? And you say, okay, what's going to cost us the most? There are some features that are basically foundational. So you have to have those in order for everything to work. So you have to build that first, regardless of its cost. And then you identify areas where, okay, what are the number one most important things? And again, I did research. I asked, what are the features that you would want to see first? What are the most critical to your operations that you feel will engage your users? And then we focused on those. And then we created a product roadmap that allowed us to plan ahead and identify, here's when we're going to launch and release this. And then we're going to launch and release this. For example, our reward store, the long-term goals is to integrate with a third-party marketplace. That takes work. That's something like Amazon. But we don't need that right away. We can fulfill the prizes up front. So we do that as part of our MVP. Right now, it functions. It doesn't function to scale, but we know how we're going to scale it. So you really find ways to launch features without spending a ton of time, energy, and resources. Especially financial resources if you're on a bootstrap budget, to get it to market. And again, fail fast. Do people want this? Because if they don't, you haven't spent too much money. You can pivot and go towards the direction that the things that they do want. Because we may find out things. I believe I know everything and I know exactly what you want, but you're going to tell me different. That's the difference between UX and reality. You have to get the reality and you got to design to that. So minimize your expenses up front and use feedback as part of your journey.
So in this process, getting to where you're at now, what would you say has been kind of the biggest challenge or roadblock that you've faced?
Well, it's one that we're going to continue to face, and something that we're developing a process to help minimize or make stronger. And I think a big part of that's going to be just getting brand recognition is API. So we're reliant on integrations with other software applications. Our industry, unfortunately, one of the biggest challenges in our industry is there's a lot of legacy software. So they don't have like pre-built APIs. So you got to work, directly with them and their team. You may have to pay them for their time and their development costs, or build. So we're trying to build affiliate programs so that way there's an incentive for them to integrate with us. And so that has been the biggest challenge to date. But we're addressing that in different ways, and where we want to be able to build that brand recognition where their customers are going to go to them and say, we want this integration, we want this product. And as soon as we get enough market share, word spreads pretty quick. And we feel strongly that we're going to have a really effective product and that other people are going to request it. And so then those companies will come to us. But for now, we have to do what we need to do to get integrated. And that process is going to be evolving over the course of time. So we have a solution, but I think it's just short term. We need a long term solution.
Yeah, that's great.
Jimmy, shifting gears a little bit, what is the team makeup? What does your team look like right now, and kind of how did you start, and what does the roadmap look like there as far as your team goes?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, we started really in earnest back in February, and then COVID hit, right? So for us, it's remote, for the most part, and our developers, the majority of our developers are in Ukraine. I mean, you get the most value with a team from Ukraine. I mean, there's developers in Russia and India and Poland and all across the world, and you just kind of got to pick your poison. And we did an extensive study. My first hire was my CTO. So, and this is somebody who I worked with in the past who's had a lot of success in engineering, software engineering, and software development, and building teams and managing teams that are multinational, international teams. So we built. We have about 8 people in Ukraine. We have a data scientist that helps with my algorithm and has helped solidify our algorithm. Excuse me. We've got some fire truck that goes by. We have thin windows. In any case, the data scientist is in Russia. We have our system architect in California. We have our lead creative director down in Atlanta. So we're spread out, and we've got a team of about 20 people. We also have a sales and marketing team. You guys have, I think, spoke with Megan. She's my assistant, but also our community manager, helping develop the brand and brand recognition. We have a marketing director. we have an SEO strategist, we have a social media manager. So some of them are part-time, some of them are contract, some of them are full-time employees. And our first hire, we're working with a VP of sales. Well, he's a sales consultant right now, but we'd love to bring him on board as a VP of sales. He's developing our sales program. We're building it up front so we know how we're going to scale, how we're going to train our people, what we're training them on, what systems we're using, what's our sales funnel look like, and building out the entire hierarchy of the sales department as well. So we're kind of building our foundation. And so that way, when we finalize our seed round, we can do we can have the right plan to pick the right people to execute on these plans, these strategies.
That's great. So I everybody asked me this about our business, but how'd you come up with the name?
Zizo?
Yeah, and what's it mean?
That's actually it's an easy one for me. Zizo stands for zoom in, zoom out. Or from an executive level standpoint, you always have to kind of lead from the top, right? And you're above the trees, you're seeing the big picture, and you're able to kind of get visuals on everything. But in order to really make key decisions, you got to zoom in, and you got to get granular. You got to get in the weeds. You got to get with your people. You have that human element. You got to talk to people. And from a data standpoint, that's really where we focus a lot of our information and that zoom in, that ability to efficiently get granular, get into the weeds. One of our benefits, gamification is probably the novel, fun, new thing that we're really selling, but really that's not the only thing. Business intelligence is just as critical, just as important. Access to that data is going to be a key thing in the next coming years. So when we pull all of these pieces of information in, now we've got a data warehouse that not only is it centralized, but it's defragmented. So I'm pulling data from your phone system, from your collection software, your CRM, from your compliance, your HR, your time and attendance, your payroll. All of these different data points are now housed in a central place, and I map them. So now they're talking to one another. So if I want information about the influence between the number of phone calls versus my production, I don't have to go into two different systems, put them in a spreadsheet, create a pivot table, build all these formulas. They're all right there. I just build a dashboard to tell you exactly how many deals per call or calls per deal that you have. And we build that ability to see it from, as an organization, this is where you're at. As a team, team A is doing this, team B is doing that. As an individual, Tony is doing this and Andy is doing that. And let me drill into Tony and really get granular with Tony, because I need to work with Tony because he needs some help and some training. So that's what really the name Zizo came from, is just zoom in, zoom out, the ability to efficiently get in and out, the ability to efficiently manage, and to free people up from this data drown. Because there's a data lake. People are just swimming in data and information. How do you figure out what's important? So we help in our discovery process identify those KPIs that drive your business objectives. We gamify a few of them. We dashboard the rest and give you access to that. So that way now you're no longer doing all of these things just to have the ability or the tools to manage. The tools are right there. Go spend time with your people, do your training, and zoom in and out as you need to. And that's kind of where our name came from. And, we're proud of it.
I love it. I think that's a great, story and way to describe it. And that is, it really ties into the value of what you're providing, is that zoom in, zoom out. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Pretty cool. I'm kind of curious, people, they're out looking to raise funds. They've maybe never been through it. It sounds like you're in the process of doing capital raise. What's kind of your experience right now trying to go out and raise money, and what advice would you give to other folks that are thinking about that path for their own, software product?
Mm-hmm. It's a whole different world. I mean, it's been quite the experience. I've probably spent over the past 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 80% of my time working on securing that. And that's, building all of the collateral, building your business plan, building your pitch deck, getting your pro formas in order, making sure that all of the, not marketing, but informational type stuff, your due diligence. And then you're working with your accountants and your attorneys to make sure that your offer is fair and the valuation is fair. And then you got to go out there and pitch. And you got to find the people to pitch to. And there's a lot of resources out there on the internet. There's a lot of forms that you got to fill out and a lot of presentations that you got to give. And you get a lot of no's, and you just can't just be demotivated by those no's. I mean, you can have people who just ghost you and then come back, to you months later. Part of our strategy, building a CRM, to manage all of these leads, because they may not invest in your first round, but we're looking to build an email campaign that sends out monthly updates that says, here's where we're at, this is what we've accomplished, here's where we're going, this is the next step. And so when they follow your progress, they, in the beginning, they may not have believed either in the idea or you or the industry, but when they see that you're making progress, they may come back and say, no, this is what we want to be a part of. So I could probably write a book on it right now with my experiences. I actually, this morning, I did a Zoom presentation for about 35 people from local Western New York venture associates. They bring, angel investors, personal investors, different people in, and they offer 2 people an opportunity once a month to give a presentation, and then you may get some leads from that. So there's a lot of different avenues you can go down to raise capital. The friends and family round or the seed round, you're normally supposed to go to your friends and family. I'm dealing with COVID. I'm dealing with uncertainty. I'm dealing with an election. I'm dealing with unemployment. Not a lot of people are out there looking to just throw money at startups. So all of this is, can be demotivating. And, my biggest advice to anybody that's doing it, make sure you know what you're talking about first. And, so part of the vetting process is also validation to pitch to investors. Don't just go out there, use that information to help you show why your idea is going to be successful or has the marketplace for it. So it's multi-purposeful, that vetting process, because you're going to need it to convince investors to put money into you, because they'll invest in you, but they also want to know that the idea and the product is going to work as well.
Yeah, just like that vetting process that we talked about of doing your research and understanding the market, I think going out to investors and getting that feedback, and finding other folks to give you feedback is really important. I've always thought, I've worked with folks and they're always afraid to share their idea, whether someone's going to steal it or maybe they're just tepid. But I kind of say, put it out there and get as much feedback. It doesn't mean you have to take it all and, handle it, but you can, at least you're getting feedback from folks.
Yeah.
Do you have any mentors or anybody that you've used throughout, whether your full history or recently with this product, but, who do you go to when you need feedback?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, growing up as a young entrepreneur is something that I wish that I would have had or sought to find a group. And I think there's more so now with the internet. They've created a lot of different sources of mentorship, whether it's local, Chamber of Commerce kind of thing, local venture associates or angel groups that also offer that. So I didn't have anything growing up. I really learned a lot by falling on my face and just reapplying those lessons over and over again, and use my peers as well as kind of, they say that it's lonely at the top, and it's true. I joined a CEO peer group a few years back, and this helps. We all share the same problems. We may not be in the same industries, but we share the same problems, and we bounce ideas off of one another. So it was kind of like a collective mentorship program. Specifically for this venture, I did actually hire a mentorship organization. It's called Enjoy the Work. They're great. They assign you a mentor, but you have access to their entire network of mentors and advisors. And we meet once a week, and we have an agenda, and he is probably, Ned, who's my advisor, is probably taught me the most out of anybody, specifically about capital raise, and I mean, he'll spitball for like 5-10 minutes and he'll give me so much information. It blows my mind. And, I've been in business for 20 something years. It's a space I don't know. I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
And he just rattles it off like that. And so it's important to find people that can assist you in growing in different areas. And, especially if you're not familiar with raising capital. Buffalo, we're in Buffalo, New York. It's not a big venture type city. There's not a lot of access to capital like San Francisco or New York City or LA or Chicago. There's a huge network where you can just tap into and everybody knows everybody. Buffalo is more older money, more conservative type of investments, collateralized investments, where tech is, in San Francisco, everything is funded. In Buffalo, they're not going near tech. But we had a success in ACV auctions recently in Buffalo. It's our first $1 billion valuation tech company in the city. And I think that's changing the mindset a little bit of the investors here. So they're looking a little bit closer at opportunities, my opportunity being one of those. So I'm excited to see Buffalo kind of grow into that tech community, and then start to build more mentorship programs. Launch New York is actually something that I just connected with as well. And they provide you what they call an entrepreneur in residence. So also a mentorship program as well. Although, some people might consider me a seasoned veteran, 20 years in business, over 20 years, you never stop learning. So, you can always use people to bounce ideas off of and give you a different perspective.
Yeah, it's been one of the most powerful things for me. I've had my business for 18 years is, when I got involved with CEO peer groups and mentors and all these things, I mean, that was, besides making mistakes, one of the biggest learning opportunities that there were. And I think, like you mentioned with capital raise, especially for software businesses, that's a whole different world and terminology that even if you run a business, it's just completely different. And so it's a lot of new learning to go through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially when there's different investors that look at different things. For example, total addressable market. This was a new term that I learned. And how do you calculate total addressable market? Is it the revenues that industry spends? Is it the cost of the problem? Is it the number of potential users that can potentially be on your platform multiplied by your license, your user license fee? Multiple investors look at it and give me different answers. So it's really difficult until you've had this experience to understand there's never really one good answer. You're going to have to be versatile and be prepared to answer it any given way. And so, and I put those always in my appendix in my pitch deck. So if they ask a question, it may not be in my pitch, but I got a reference. I do know at least the answers to your questions. I may not have been prepared for it in the presentation. So yeah, it helps to have, and all this I learned from Enjoy the Work, my advisor, Ned there. He really helped with helping me understand. And the biggest thing he advised me is that point that I made is, look, you're never going to make everybody happy. So, pick one, move forward, be ready to answer any question now.
Yeah, it's great. So what is the next stage look like in this beta? How are you going through this process, and what do you think the next 6 months looks like, and what kind of challenges do you think you'll face?
Well, a beta is a critical part of obviously any sort of launch, and it's a controlled group where you're getting instant feedback. They understand that there's going to be some bugs early on. That's our first priority, is to fix the bugs, get it working, and then really focus on the features and see which features that they're using, getting feedback on that. We have to identify what we consider a successful beta, measure, report, track, and build according to those results. We plan on doing phased beta, so we're bringing one company on first. We'll get the low-hanging fruit, and then we'll add a second company. We'll get a little bit bigger control group or a group to give us feedback. and we hope to add one more group before our end of our beta version, our beta testing. So our beta test, we're looking to try to do 3 to 4 months of beta testing, but we're continuing to build features at the same time. So MVP, beta, add features, launch them to our beta group, get feedback, make sure that we're getting the right thing. But at the same time, we're building our sales team. We're out there giving presentations. We're putting people in our backlog. So we're selling. So we're not just sitting idle waiting for this thing to be finished. We know what we're selling. And, we're out there. We've already got letters of intent from a large group of people who are ready to get onboarded with us. So, and we finalize our processes. There's sales processes that we're building. There's onboarding processes that we're building. There's marketing and branding processes that we're building, and teams that we've got to build to fill those processes. So the next 6 months is about really building our foundation. So that way, when we are ready to grow, we've got everything in place, that we're not scrambling last minute. We're not just, and that as the leader, as the CEO, I've got to be able, again, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in on marketing. Let's talk about what our goals are. Find the right person, plug that person in, zoom back out, look at the big picture, get in on sales, get in on development, get in on beta testing. All of those things you have to, as a leader, have your finger on the pulse and just, be ready to answer any questions and understand what's going on. But having the right team, I think, is just as critical. Putting people that are, self-propelling, self-manageable. They do bounce things off of you, but they don't mean to move forward. So that's what our next 6 months look like. It's really building our foundation for the future or for 2021 for us to hit our sales goals.
So we've had a pretty tumultuous 2020. I'm just kind of curious, what do you think, all the changes that we've had in the business world and everything that's going on, how do you think that's going to, end up changing the way people do business over the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you think that might impact you growing your company?
Some of that, the answer does depend on who's going to win this election. Obviously, we just completed election day. We don't know the results yet. I think they have two very different kind of fiscal plans and tax plans, and those plans really impact the way people make business decisions. And that does impact us. With respect to COVID, we all understand the effects of COVID and how remote work and the work from home environment has become the norm. And does it become the new norm? You look at cities like New York City, where people have terminated leases that pay $10,000, maybe $20,000, $30,000 a month, and they're getting the same sort of productivity from a remote team. So they're considering keeping that more permanent and maybe shrinking their office spaces and just having that as a place where people go for in-person meetings. But it also allows them to really not scale, but have a much bigger human resource pool to pick from, because they don't all need to be in the same place. And so that does provide an opportunity for me, because when you've got a remote workforce, you still have to keep them engaged. You still have to keep them somehow not being distracted at home, and give them something that they can latch onto, communicate with. We do have a social engagement component to our platform, where you're getting peer review, you're getting peer recognition, and they're following your career the same way you're following them. You're comparing how they're doing, or you're competing against them or with them. So we feel that the work from home environment does actually help us in terms of, we have a solution. We didn't set out to build a solution for it. It was a very different problem that we were looking to solve, but this definitely works for what we're looking to do. So 2021, again, I think once we determine who our next president is going to be, it'll help us kind of get an idea what sort of decisions are going to happen. And I think it even may take 3 to 4 months before, after January, once, whether if it's Biden, then, it's going to take 3 or 4 months after that to see what he's going to do to change the landscape, and businesses may adjust accordingly from there.
Yeah, very interesting.
Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time here, Jimmy. So I certainly want to say thank you. This has been great. Really good stuff. I encourage everyone to go check out Zizo. It's playzizo.com. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. And then I would, Jimmy Shabat. Look him up on LinkedIn and connect with them. It's been great. We really appreciate the time spent here today, and we will see everybody next time. Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Bye.
Take care.